Everybody, welcome to Webinar Wednesday. My name is Martijn Lofvers. I'm the Chief Trendwatcher of Supply Chain Media. I'm also the Editor-in-Chief of Supply Chain Movement, a European quarterly magazine, still in print, but we also have a digital version, and we have a huge group on LinkedIn, I think 60,000 members worldwide. And I'm also the architect of the SCM IT Supermap Europe. We'll discuss that later. In the next 60 minutes live, we will talk about how agentic process intelligence helps supply chain teams prioritize daily decisions. So that's interesting to see, and it's a hot topic. We have a lot of reticence. I think we have over 200 people possibly live in the audience, but we'll see about that. Okay, next to me, I have the honor of the winner of the European Supply Chain Startup Contest of 2026, Lotte Vugs. Welcome.
Yeah, Martijn, thanks for inviting me.
So like I said, you are the co-founder and the CEO of Konekti. You have studied Technical University in Eindhoven, Industrial Engineering and Business Science, just like me, but for me it's a long time ago. We didn't have AI back then. So you told me your drive is efficiency, and also you have an operations research background yourself.
Yeah.
So basically that's the foundation to start Konekti, probably.
Yeah, it is. So the underlying technology on which it's based on was also invented at the TU Eindhoven, so it was a logical step. I have a background in computer science, like a lot of people. I think the speed at which analytics are now improving are fascinating and have been over the last 10 years. And industrial engineering, efficiency. We had this talk before. I find it hard to explain why. I remember that, for example, my husband, he once said to me that a relationship is a constant trade-off between romance and efficiency. And at that point, I know, okay, this is the man I want to marry. But why that efficiency is so important for me, I find it hard to explain. But that's also where my interest in supply chain comes from.
Interesting, about marriage, because you were at our Innovate Supply Chain event, so that was, where the contest was taking place. And I know Professor Carlos Cardon, he's professor at IMD Business School in supply chain, and he talks about collaboration in supply chain. It's like marriages, it's about constant trade-offs and what kind of shit you want to take from the other party to continue. So basically that's it. All right, before we get into the matter of process intelligence and AI, a few things, household matters. So this webinar is being recorded. The recording will be made available on YouTube within 48 hours. Also, the presentation will be made available as PDF, as downloadable through our website. The audience is on mute, so you can all chat to each other. You say hi, whatever that you are here. And probably you will ask, is this being recorded? Yes, it is. So if you have questions for this, feel free to use the Q&A functionality. So I have to upload my presentation again. Sorry for this disruption. So if you have questions for Lotte or me, please use the Q&A functionality. So that's one down below on the Q&A functionality. If the questions are in light of our conversation, I will ask these questions immediately. If not, we have a Q&A at the end. And also we have still an extra 30 minutes after the whole hour, so you can sit down with Lotte and me in a virtual lounge. As of now, we'll put off our camera so you can enlarge your screen, and then you have a better look at the slides at hand. And why? Now that's what we see here right now. So Konekti is the winner of the European Supply Chain Startup Contest that was taking place in Amsterdam on June 3rd as part of the Innovate Supply Chain event. And as you can see, there are two other parties were involved, other startups. Carbon Leap, that's a supply chain of a carbon insetting. So not buying trees, but buying bio-based fuels to get your Scope 3 emissions down. And Horizon Solutions, that's basically a modern advanced planning and scheduling solution with the AI. Well, congratulations again, Lotte, for winning this contest. So
Thanks.
what was your feedback on this event?
It was really great event. It was a lot bigger than I initially thought. There were so many people to talk to that I think I only talked to maybe 10%. So yeah, it was good, a lot of experience. I really liked that visualization that you had of that supply chain as a river.
Okay.
I'm very curious if people that went there also did that for their own organization, because I found that a very good visualization of how supply chains work.
So basically, I ended up the Innovate Supply Chain event, to visualize the flow of demand, and I showed some examples from Nestle and a manufacturer of pet food. And basically, sit down in the afternoon. Where's the demand coming from? As a river with some ponds and some disturbances and etc. And it's an acceleration. And basically, Nestle has done that, and I've showed that. And the answer is, has someone done it? Yes. I know Adama, the sister company of Syngenta, bio-based crop protection. Well, I know the supply chain directors. She has done the similar stuff and created this kind of visualization. All right. Konekti, we'll get to the part, what Konekti is doing. Basically, and this is IT supplement map I have been creating since 2011, an overview of ERP, WMS, TMS, APS vendors and the likes. And you see two companies highlighted. Celonis, that's business process mining, the RPA world. That's where you're coming from. You did some business in that area earlier. So that's one thing. So Celonis is into the supply chain since a few years, creating supply chain digital twins or digital supply chain twins. There's one area, an Era technology. That's the so-called market leader of decision intelligence in supply chain. So how do you create agents and that kind of stuff? And Unilever is working with that. Mars is rolling out Era technology. So that's the field you're playing in. So basically, you are competing with this kind of big vendors. So how do you see that? As your field of competition in this way?
Yeah, indeed. I think you put the right logos on the screen. So Celonis. So I say the cradle for process intelligence is in Eindhoven at the University of Eindhoven, but it's definitely the Germans that made it big. And Celonis has been a market leader in our industry for the last 5 to 10 years. And that's indeed the industry that we're in, process intelligence. How we differentiate from others in that space is we are offering a more agentic way of doing process intelligence. We'll tell more about the benefits of that, I think, later in this call. That's one. And the second of that will be private cloud. So that's how we differentiate between the process intelligence within the process intelligence market. And it's really interesting because what we're seeing is it's a lot of different analytics techniques are now more and more convergent to decision intelligence. Because with the right digital twin of your processes, you can now actually drive decisions. Something that was previously hard to do because the analysis took so much time and effort to set up and to run every time. So decision intelligence, I'm thinking, a lot of things will converge to providing more decision intelligence.
Yeah, and you're right. So this is the vendor side. So what's available on the market with ERP, WMS, TMS, SNOP, and you name it, and digital twins, or that's coming from network design software. So that's the background for like some of the vendors who are getting into the digital supply chain twin, like Sofus and Optologic. But this is the overview of from the company side, and it's a quite complex picture. So I created this picture based on some conversations with manufacturing experts and from the user side. So basically, supply chain executive in general, they don't have an overview of the IT landscape internally. They say, my IT department has it with the APIs and that kind of stuff. So this is why I created this for the purpose of supply chain execution and supply chain planning. What do we have? What's needed? So to explain this, on the left side, you see the supplier side. On the right side, you see the consumer side. And you see ERP as a transaction layer down below. And I hope you're getting in the position you have a data lake to extract data from your ERP. And then on top of that, you have all kind of execution software, WMS, MES, and you name it. And higher up, it's going into the planning field. And on top of that, you have business intelligence, for the long run and that kind of stuff. So this is it. And now I highlighted a few things to talk about more about process intelligence and different kind of layers. So maybe you can tell us, Konekti, what kind of systems are you connecting to get this digital twin?
Yeah, I think this is a good picture because it shows also the complexity that a lot of supply chains have to deal with, right? If you want transparency over your supply chains, you need to connect data from a lot of different systems. The ERP system, right? The enterprise resource planning system, that's what holds, I think that's a core for understanding your processes. And then, so that's where a lot of the Konekti engagements usually start with ERP data. But we also see that a lot of other system of records that are being used are WMS systems, TMS systems, in manufacturing settings, management execution systems. Yeah. So we usually need multiple systems in order to create full transparency with the ERP as a core.
So, and the reason why I put ERP down below is, some data are still on default from 10 years ago. Some lead times from suppliers are still on default 10 years ago, and the world has changed in the meantime. Yeah. So we get a lot of feedback that, our data in ERP environment is not as accurate enough to take decisions. So basically, sometimes they have a better or more accurate data about lead times, etc., on your warehouse management system, transport management system, etc., or your advanced planning systems. Yeah. So that's also, I think, need to know where are my accurate data sitting.
Yeah, and that's one of the deliverables, but that we often have after first engagements is things like where do you have the wrong master data? So where are your lead times incorrect? Because you see that if you're planning with the wrong lead times, then that often results in a lot of disruptions within your supply chain. Yeah. And that's something that you can. That's usually one of the first things to fix in order to make your planning more predictable.
So, interestingly enough, we mentioned Celonis. They have grown. They come from Germany. They have grown on the back end of SAP. So, business process mining within a huge ERP environment. Let's call it SAP R3. Basically, they visualize the different kind of flows within large multinationals like Beiersdorf and the likes. And basically, they visualize how things were going internally, which kind of steps were being taken to make a decision or whatever, approval, etc. And then they make suggestions how to improve this process, how to take out some steps, etc., shortcuts. And there was, by then, internally within big multinationals, so that's why it was still in the ERP environment. Mm-hmm. But later on, they connected other systems and they go out of the ERP environment, also connecting to other systems, possibly to the supplier side or the commercial side. Mm-hmm. So is it also your case, or you are still connecting mainly with the systems that internally, WMS, MES, within the manufacturing environment of the company? Or
yeah, and indeed, you're right that indeed, for example, Celonis and most of the vendors, they focused on SAP first. Mm-hmm. For us, the system in use is less important. Traditionally with process intelligence, you needed to really select which systems that you were going to make an offering for, because it took a lot of time to figure out what the relevant data was in those systems and how you combine that to a good digital twin. With a more agentic approach, that emphasis on already having a lot of prior knowledge of the system is a bit smaller. Of course, we still do a lot of SAP work, but we also see that hooking up custom systems to Konekti goes a lot faster than what we've experienced with other tooling because of the more agentic approach. So you can give it your system's documentation for what you have of it, the documentation that's available on the internet, and what Konekti already knows on how to find this data in other systems. And that means that it can find a good digital representation of processes much more faster than people are used to that know the traditional approaches.
So we'll have a look how it looks like, to explain it better. But maybe that was the part of the European supply chain contest. I was part of the jury of this contest, and we got, I think, 11 startups, qualifying for the contest. And basically, the main question is, what kind of problem are you solving with your startup? And this is so basically, this is what I also asked to you, to Konekti. So what kind of problems are you solving?
Yeah, it's the problems that Konekti helps to solve are the problems that people in supply chains experience when taking daily decisions.
Okay.
So I decided to just put one on this to emphasize how difficult it is to make these daily decisions. So, for example, a question like, okay, the supplier is late, but is this critical? What you need to answer is to think, do I need to act on it now or not? If you wanna know the answer, it's always, it depends, right? Mm-hmm. So it could be that it is a business critical issue, but that depends on what material it is actually linked to, and if that production order is really required to start tomorrow, or that the customer is still flexible with the committed delivery date, if there's an alternative stuck somewhere, and whether production can just resequence around it. And so this is only one question, but getting an answer to it means that you need to understand the full downstream supply chain.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what we're here to help with, to get more transparency over your supply chain, so that to help in making like the daily decisions like these ones.
So my point is, you mentioned downstream, in the direction of the consumer, but I also think upstream is interesting to see. Our supplier is late, so do you already know, or is it an ETA, and where this information is coming from, and who is delivering it to you? Is it the supplier itself, or is it a 3PL? So also upstream, I can imagine that you would like to know, how accurate is this data, the supplier is being late.
Yeah. What we usually see is what you need to know the downstream chain in order to understand whether it's critical or not. But of course, the next question is, the next question is, okay, so what are we going to do about it if this is critical? Yeah. And if you want to answer that question, then it's important to know what happened to this and similar orders of suppliers.
So another thing is what you mentioned also during the content now. Why don't we deliver on time while our warehouses are overstocked? Another problem.
Yeah. Like another question that highlights, I think, how difficult it is to take these decisions, right? So you look at your inventory and you see excessive inventory and material shortages. Maybe on one material, you see that you have sufficient now, but that you had shortages in the past. And in order to have the question with inventory is always, do we have the right, not only do we have the material, but do we have it at the right time, at the right place? And that means that you need to understand both you need to have transparency over the supply chain in order to make these decisions effectively.
Yeah, and also over time, you want to know, do I recognize certain patterns if I have ordered too much too early or too much or whatever? You get into bullwhips possibly, etc. So you have to recognize what have you done in the past, and is it was it the right decision?
Yeah, and process intelligence is all about that, right? It's about resolving recurring problems where for those problems for which we can learn from the past.
Mm-hmm. So there are different views on it. So how do you visualize this? And you have a nice picture here.
Yeah. So the question here is indeed, so why is it so difficult to make these daily decisions without agentic process intelligence? And there's two reasons that I wanted to discuss with you, Martijn, to also see if you share these observations. One is the fragmented views. So what we see, if you look into a supply chain, everyone has only its own view of the operations. So logistics sees a missed pickup, production a blocked order, planning a material shortage, but no one sees how these things are intertwining and how one decision can lead to a ripple effect into other domains. Mm-hmm. And that means that everyone makes a decision, or in this, the analogy is makes a decision of what it is. In supply chains, it is the decision on what action to take based on the limited available that they are aware of, which means local optimizations that make sense from your point of view, but that are globally wrong.
Yeah. So no, it's I totally agree about this, and I recognize this. It's even worse. This is standard practice, and you won't resolve it as long as you have different KPIs for different kind of business function. So as long as procurement is still, you want to have cost savings based on volumes, and logistic about also lowest cost, sales about revenue. So it's also, yes, I agree totally with the different kind of notion, but it's also inherited with the misalignment of a lot of KPIs.
Yeah. That's definitely a part of the reason, right? Because indeed, if people have different reasons that drive them, you make different decisions because you're not optimizing for the same thing.
No.
But even if you are, so for example, at Advantech, they wanted to understand why their OTIF was under pressure.
Yeah.
But if you asked around in their organization, different stakeholders, they had over 10 different ideas on which issue was most important to resolve.
Yeah.
One said it was we're blocking orders too often, so it's credit management. Someone says no, it's the inaccurate lead time, so we don't have things on stock when we expect them to. Someone else, it's our customers, they pick up late. And this is another example where like each of these reasons was true, but some were more true than others, right? And everyone looked at it from their own perspectives, and their observations were valid. But only when we created this end-to-end process view could we see that it was a chain, right? So that it was inventory that was not labeled correctly, it was incorrect internal lead times, regional demand differences. But not only that, so not only could we see it was a chain, we could also see which of the reasons were most important to resolve because they had the biggest impact on in this case, they had a shared KPI, on their shared KPI.
Yeah. So when I look at this picture with the elephant, and this executives, they are all blindfolded. So one thing is, they have to take off the blinds for one thing.
Yeah.
And then you have to visualize the end-to-end supply chain. So basically that's the one thing to resolve it, and then it looks like this.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, what a great bridge, Martijn. I didn't think of it. All right. So indeed, because even if you turn off the blinds, right, what you're then seeing is the finish line. So that bottom half that says who won.
Yeah.
That's what dashboards are showing today. They show what's currently in stock, which orders are overdue, where do you have currently shortages. But even if you have those dashboards in place, they rarely explain the answers of why you're currently having them, right? So in the analogy of the sports race, the finish line, you didn't win on OTIF, but you don't know which delay caused delayed delivery.
Yeah.
And the analogy that I'd like to put here, and it's hard to see without pointing it out, but especially since this is 100 meters. So this was a race that was run on a few thousandths of a second. But it was the man in row 7 that won, and the man in lane 4 that was second. And if you look into the picture, like solely based on the finish line, you can see that the person came in second. But only if you see the full picture of what happened, if you see the history, can you find out what he needs to train on in order to win next time. And in this case, that is his start. So you see that he almost picked up, but that he was slower at the beginning. And you can translate that to supply chain questions as well, right? If you're having material shortages, dashboards can tell you where they are, but only process intelligence and only the history of those material shortages can tell you what you can learn from the past in order to win next time.
So you see the third from the right in the yellow. You see indeed, in second step, so from the start. So he was lagging, and so he was almost lost, I think. was number 7, so the third from the right, the USA in the red shirt and blue shorts. He was already, first place.
Yeah.
And if you look at this analogy, I also think, this is, you can also see this is a chain of 8 links, and it's like a drum buffer rope, goldratt, the goal. So basically, the weakest link of number 7, the number 2 person, is the second part. So there you find the weakest link in your chain, if it would be from raw material to last mile.
Oh, you're good with the analogies. Yeah, if you take one athlete to be a supply chain of a particular material, then you can then find out indeed where in the supply chain the delays occur.
So basically, I wrote a blog about it. It's already 10 years ago, about SNOP, and it's a relay race of 4 times 100 meters.
Yeah.
And you have the handover from the participants who is in the lead, marketing, sales, supply, and then financial. So and then it was about how did we do it in last round of SNOP, and then also it's the handovers. How did it go? So that's also in athletics, but a different environment. But there's also handovers, so you can also relate to that.
Yeah, exactly. And I think in both cases, right? If you in order to find out what goes wrong in the operations, you need to see the entire race, if that's a relay race or 100 meters.
Yeah.
And that's something that traditional dashboards don't show.
No. So let's dig into the digital twin and your environment, the techie environment.
Yeah.
So please explain, how do you get to a digital twin? How do you build it up?
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, the last slide told us, right, that you can't see where to improve based only on the finish line. You know that you lost, but you don't know where you gave it away. Mm-hmm. And Agentic Process Intelligence shows you exactly what went wrong and what you can learn to do better next time. So, Konekti is a software platform. We offer Agentic Process Intelligence, and that means we model how your business runs. That means we figure out what the data assets are that describe your process, what together makes up your inventory process or your outbound process, and what specific business rules are necessary to understand your organization. And based on that digital twin of your supply chain, we can analyze how your business runs. Because that means we don't only have the finish line, but we know the full history. And that means we can look for the patterns in your supply chain, the parts where bottlenecks occurred or delays or where things went wrong, to analyze questions like what material shortages are we expecting next week, and what can we still do about it. Therefore, we shifted from only saying what material shortages do we have to what material shortages are we expecting, right, if we're looking forward, and the more action-drivenness of it. What can we do about it?
So if I look at it, and I was wondering, if you look at, say, warehouse management systems, so the more advanced systems, they have machine learning in it. For example, picking routes. So what should be better picking routes? But that's only on one element of what can go wrong in your whole process. So of course you would like to improve your picking routes in your warehouse and then gain some efficiency, that kind of stuff. But that's only on certain aspects of the day. Whereas this business process mining, you would look at, what is the biggest improvement or the biggest hurdle in your process?
Yeah, and this is a good one, right? Because one thing that can come out of an engagement with Agentic Process Intelligence is you should optimize your picking routes, because the current algorithm leads to that you get too much distance. But what this tries to do first is taking a little bit of a broader perspective. So looking at WMS and picking, if you're in an outbound logistics space, the problem could be that your picking algorithm it doesn't suffice for your warehouse layout. It could also be that people release picking waves too early. Meaning that there's not enough orders to make a good pick list from, or that you installed automated assembly automated lines, but people are still using the manual ones for one reason or another. So the value of it is that you take one step back, look at the process as a whole, and then see, okay, which levers do we need to pull in order to optimize this, instead of taking the first optimization technique that one can think of.
As a whole, I've been in this space already for 2 decades or 3 decades, looking at supply chain software, WMS, TMS, APS, you name it.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, this kind of software used to be used, we are implemented, and we are already happy that we have, a schedule for our production, and we already have some pick lists, and all the orders are out of our warehouse. So we're already happy that we have done our job.
Mm-hmm.
The main new thing is with AI and with the digital twin, can we improve it? And with your gut feeling, you see that things could be improved. But now you get a better overview how the flow really goes, and where the hurdles are and the bottlenecks are, and where you could improve. So that's the main difference compared to existing WMS, TMS, and you name it.
Yeah, and I'd like to challenge your statement that in a lot of companies that people are satisfied with the amount of orders that leave their warehouse in time, because what we still see in practice, even with more advanced systems in place, that automation doesn't always resolve the underlying issues. So all of our customers have at least one burning problem in their supply chains why they choose for another for the agentic process intelligence thing.
But one thing, what I've seen, when companies decide to implement WMS, TMS, APS, and you name it, they already have, already happy that they are live. That the system works, and hopefully they get some improvement and more productivity. That's sort of what's one thing. It's another question if you make the best out of it. Most of the times it's not. But the one thing is you want to get rid of all your Excels and your manual stuff.
Yeah. 100% agree.
So how does it look like? Maybe you can explain it.
Yeah. So unfortunately, it's not as cool as a athletic race, but this is what you can expect from process intelligence if you're looking at processes yourself. So people often ask, okay, what does it look like if I'm looking at my supply chain processes, for example, in order to analyze material shortages? And this is what you're getting. And this is, I think, when people already know process intelligence, this looks very familiar. And what it basically does is it makes visible how material and orders flow through your processes. Yeah. What type of behavior happened often, and which did it. The thing that you traditionally need to do based on diagrams and pictures like this is go through it yourself and find out where are the biggest bottlenecks, and then derive actions from it. What makes the analysis with agentic process intelligence new is that instead of having to go to these things manually yourself, you can just ask an agent to look at these diagrams and formulate an action plan for your specific problem need. And that's actually what you're seeing if you're going into the next slide. That you can just ask, okay, in this case I asked, let's see, show next week's material shortage risks and actions to prevent them today. And you'll see that it will be running the process analysis for you, and then come back with a result that I, for now, just put in the slide afterwards. If people want to have a live demo of this, shoot me a message. That's often a bit more impressive than 3 slides. But what you're seeing right now is the material shortage risk assessment that I did for this data set. And it's interesting to see what it comes back with. So, for example, the first thing that's critical is SKUs without any stock, which is an easy win, I would say. But the second one is more sophisticated and maybe more interesting. What it advises to do is to reallocate material for which there is a material shortage expected from lower prior repair orders. Apparently in this organization, repair orders have a lower prior, to higher prior new buys. Not only does it give an advice, but also specifically for which materials and which orders you should be doing this. So that's a type of analysis that previously either wasn't possible or takes a lot of work, and now can be done within minutes by agents within the Konekti platform.
So you go through this quite fast, because I still had some questions about the flows.
yeah, go ahead. Sure.
So I did this kind of stuff manually with sticky notes, and you go through that. That's quite a hassle. So how easy is it to get this visualization of the flows you showed earlier? So what do you need to get this flows? Because I've seen it with Salonis last year with the digital supply chain twin. It's quite impressive, this kind of flows, and parallel flows and alternative flows, etc. So I think that is something what it amazes me, that you get this kind of flow charts, whereas in the old days it's quite manual stuff, and you hire a lot of consultants to create this in PowerPoint or whatever. So how easy is it, and what do you need to connect it to make it accurate to your environment? So in a warehouse management environment or a supply chain planning environment, whatever.
Yeah. So traditionally, setting this up with more traditional process intelligence for a given process context took 3 months to a year to set it up and running. With this more agentic approach, so we're always starting out with, okay, what is a operational problem that keeps coming back, right? Despite the dashboards and the escalations that you're doing today. And then once we found a recurring problem where we say this is one where we can learn from the past, for example, material shortages, or for something that was on time, improving on time in full delivery. It takes roughly 4 weeks to set up the digital twin and get the actionable insights out and validated for that first process. And every additional process goes even faster.
So I'm sorry to say, but normally I won't click back about this, but I still do.
Yeah.
So how do you assess this? So you have this, and you ask people, users, is it correct? How do you assess it that this is recognizable, and how do you know that this visualization of the flow is correct? Or maybe for them it might be new, or they see some things, oh, that's odd.
Yeah. So it usually takes a couple of iterations, but what a typical first engagement looks like is, so first we scope it down to, okay, what is the problem that we want to resolve? And then we figure out which system does this process live in, or systems, what documentation do we have on the process and the system, and then we feed it all to Kai. That's the agent in Konekti. Okay. So Kai will give us a first setup of, okay, this is what I think the digital twin will need to look like. And of course, that's one then to analyze and improve together with domain experts from the process.
Yeah.
And that goes into, usually it's the silly things, right? That a AI agent doesn't know, but people in the process know. For example, if a activity in the system is called order ready, that may not mean that the order is done and completed, but that it is ready for people to start working on. And that's the type of semantics, the type of context that people only know that they work with the system, that we then need to improve in order for our agents to give the best results. So that takes roughly a week. That's one of those 4 weeks in which we improve the digital twin in order to get it to be a good mirror of the actual process. And then comes the fun parts, because then we usually invite these domain experts to go in and explore this digital twin by themselves. Yeah. Traditionally, what would happen is analysts do all of this fun work, come back with answers, and only validate the answers. But now you can get in much more perspectives, because everyone that can ask the question can go in and find how to optimize their processes.
Yeah. So what you see here on the left side, that's a purchase order item, and the whole flow, and on the right side, the sales order item. Is it also usually how to show it in one screen, or would you like to dissect it, split it, for the right people to focus on where, what is recognizable for you, or how do you see it?
How does that work? Yeah, so we use these flows at the beginning with the domain experts to say, okay, does it make sense, right? Is this is this indeed the most common path that this goes? And then we only use these type of visualizations to validate what comes out of the analyst. So in traditional approaches, people have to go through these pictures themselves and figure out, okay, where do we see the thickest lines and the longest throughput times, and how can I translate that to insights? Right now, you can ask the agent, hey, what's going on in this process? What material shortages are there? How can I prevent them in the future? And instead of having to go and slice and dice these different pictures until you have what it needs, the agent will come up with an answer. And if you want to zoom into it, then you can look into, okay, how do I filter it for only the information I need for that specific insight?
So when I look at it, I know GTP5 was able to create better visualizations. And I tried it also. I'm quite a fan of the second novel of Eli Goldratt. So after writing the goal, he has written "It's No Luck," and in this book, in this novel, he pitched the idea of the current reality tree. Basically, it's kind of 5 times why, looking for the actual cause of a problem, and he is visualizing the current reality tree. And yes, GTP5 is able to create this kind of Ishikawa diagram to get to the source of the real problem. Is this also something you are trying to do with this kind of visualization, or is this something afterwards?
Then I would need to know more about this framework to really explain well how I'm doing it. With 71 people in the session, I don't think I dare to bluff my way through understanding these frameworks and how.
Okay, no, I will talk about later. I will explain, because this is the thing. Okay, where you visualize the current process, but then beyond, you get to the point. So here is the prompt. You ask questions like ChatGPT, and then you get your recommendations. So how do you know, how you select what to do next?
So we don't have to do that. Luckily, that's the people in the process, right? So whoever asks, hey, show next week's material shortage risks and the action to prevent them today. If indeed reallocating constrained material, if they agree with that recommendation, then that's an action that they can take in the system of records themselves. If they say, gee, this is so interesting, I want to have this information every day, right? Give me a material shortage risk assessment every day. Then that's a workflow that they can set up so that they, for example, get this up-to-date assessment every day within Teams. Is a use case that we often see.
I can imagine, that you also could ask, so next week's material shortage, and also, show the material shortage in the last weeks, and what was happening then, and what were the recommendations then. So also looking back, just like the analogy of the 100-meter sprint. So what happened in the past, and do you see commonalities of things going wrong in material shortages?
Yeah. And we see usually these are quite often different types of users. So you have people that work in operations, and they ask questions like these: what can I do now to prevent issues next week? And then people that are more into the operational excellence, lean type of roles, that are looking to how can we incrementally improve our processes so that a planner doesn't have to reallocate the constrained material, but just has enough, right? It's maybe not too much to ask. And they will ask different questions, and both will use the history, back to that athletic example, we'll use the history to get into the to get to the answers. And the question can be a daily decision that has to be made, or an more sustainable improvement to the process.
So let's talk about some use cases. So to dig in. So what can get out of it? So maybe you mentioned Agentic. Maybe you can explain what kind of company it is and what you did for this company.
Yeah, sure. So Agentic, for a lot of people, probably unfamiliar, because they are a global technology company. they share some hardware and systems for industrial customers. And with that, you have to think of like industrial computers, or for example, IoT devices. And their customers then use these components in their factories and logistical networks, which means that if deliveries from Agentic are late, this can create real problems for their customers. And this is why OTIF was such an important KPI for Agentic. And they were looking into ways to see, okay, how can we prevent these late deliveries? And as you may recall from what I said at the elephant slide, they had a lot of different ideas of what could have caused the late deliveries. And the power of Konekti was to go through all of these different hypotheses and make it very specific what the incremental improvement was possible by taking action on which root cause. And therefore, it could prioritize which root causes were most important. And those could be then organized in 2 different categories. One was stock optimization. So, for example, they had material that was not labeled as critical, while it was. So, in their case, it was simple cables that were not labeled as critical. The bigger parts that went into the modules were labeled correctly, but a lot of orders just got stuck and didn't meet the delivery deadline because a simple cable was missing. So one action was label these cables as critically as well. Other stock optimization things were incorrect supplier lead times. So Martijn, you already mentioned it at the beginning. A lot of people don't have the right lead times, and they had this too. And without these lead times, they planned too optimistically. And they also saw that there were regionally different differences in demand. This is a Taiwanese company, but their European demand was different than from other regions. So all of these tied into, okay, how can we optimize our stock? And Konekti could see not only what the right actions were to optimize it, but calculate how much OTIF improvement was associated with it and what that meant for the P&L impact. Same for customer promise. Sales was using the wrong lead times, which meant that they deliver things on times that just weren't, they were just not able to do. Late pickups was another part of this problem. And all of these different, these 5 root causes combined and the actions to take it together identified an opportunity of like 14% point in OTIF improvement.
You know, a few things, you know, this incorrect labeling of quite simple parts. It reminds me of the golden screw. So in Fukushima 2011, earthquake in Japan, and a tier 2 supplier of basically bolts for automotive. That was the single one source of the whole Asian automotive. So basically all the automotive manufacturing companies had to shut down because this golden screw, these bolts from tier 1, all of them were sourcing from the same one. So all the tier 1s are sourcing for the same tier 2. So that was called the golden screw. So that's basically, Agentic hadn't learned from this golden screw example. You should label your simple bolts or cables correctly to make sure that at least you don't get critical material shortage in that area. So that's one thing that reminds me.
That's one indeed. What we're also seeing quite often of actions to take based on the analysis that Konekti runs, where you have critical materials and still have only one supplier for it.
Yeah.
And there was quite a couple of engagements where we could just where this advice, although it sounds simple, could really make an impact. And I think the point in those cases was not that people just hadn't thought about it before, but just that because of the sheer number of different signals coming in and the firefighting mode that people in planning and supply chain are often, there was just no bandwidth to see, okay, what are the correct actions, the actions to prioritize today.
So it only took 2 days to make this connection and to get this insights?
Yeah, 2 days for the first data model, the full process visibility, and here we were, this just went quite fast.
So another thing, you mentioned OTIF, on time in full, and I hate OTIF because I think it's the ultimate lagging KPI. It's it's on time, that speed, and in full, it's completeness. And if you have a trade-off, what would you rather have? 90 products this week or 100 out of 100 next week? You should ask sales. And if you have a trade-off, you have to choose. So that's one thing. But you mentioned already different kind of views, like the elephants, OTIF. A lot of people have different kind of views on OTIF, how to calculate it as such.
Yeah.
And also what does it mean and what is important, what is the high level. And you mentioned in the call we had before this that IKEA is using the perfect order. I think I like it more, the perfect order. So that's a better overall KPI than OTIF. It's less confusing in my opinion. So that makes it also quite complex. The perfect order seems like you never have a perfect order.
Yeah, and that's right. I think when it comes to the KPIs and which KPIs to set, I think it's important to meet organizations where they are.
Yeah.
And see, okay, what is it that for now best defines how to prioritize things and how to measure performance. And also keep in mind, indeed, that that's often not set in stone. So you may start with OTIF and you keep improving that definition, and maybe later you're changing it a little bit to expand to an even wider scope of what's important to you. I think the perfect order from IKEA is a good example of that. They also at the beginning, when they started out with that as a KPI for their full order to cash process, when they started out, they started out with a very simple definition, and that definition grew over time. But the more visibility that they had over their processes, the more undesirable paths that they found and that they want to exclude. And that's what you often see with those with good KPIs. They're often not set in stone from the beginning, but as you improve, you also change the bar, what you're aiming at. So
you mentioned here 900,000 euros on identified opportunities. Did you calculate that? So what does it consist of?
For example, one thing of this was if by getting stuff out of the door faster, then invoices were sent when together with deliveries. So if we could deliver 2 weeks earlier, that means that we can also invoice 2 weeks earlier.
Okay.
And that gives a cash flow impact because that means you have your cash 2 weeks earlier.
And the CEO, the CEO likes that because he or she wants to free up the cash flow.
Yeah, so that's one. But another one is if you're not doing OTIF, that means you, in their case, right, they rather delivered something than nothing. So they had to handle a lot of split deliveries.
Yep.
That also meant that every split delivery it's additional administrative burden for operations. It's additional handling for logistics. You have additional shipping costs. So that was another lever that we could improve. And lastly, what we saw was that, and this doesn't go that much into OTIF, but they also had to expedite a lot of things. And by making this more predictable and removing the bottlenecks, also they had to expedite less and could send it via their traditional methods as well. And that's all. It all rolls up to that number.
Very recognizable. I all the things you're saying, I come across quite a lot. So with the expediting stuff. Maybe another example. Maybe you can explain what you did here.
Yeah. So reducing days inventory outstanding. So this was for a business unit of ABB, and given that they operate across very large industrial supply chains, inventory is just a major issue. And for this business unit, it meant that there was a lot of inventory tied up in cash, taking up space, and just hiding a lot of planning problems. So they were looking into understanding what caused their DIO or their excess inventory and what they could learn from it to prevent it in the future. So the root causes that Konekti serviced here were, for example, a big chunk of it was cancellations that were not acted upon. And what does that mean? We could clearly see that sales and procurement were in disconnect because there were some very large sales orders that were unfortunately cancelled, for which the purchase orders that were required to fulfill that demand were still open. So they could have been cancelled, the procurement, the POs, but they weren't, which led to a lot of stock sitting idle. Another example of this was like unexplained purchasing. This was so odd, but even with the full history, right, with the full race, the domain experts still couldn't understand why the decision was made to buy that SKUs in the first place. And the actions that we could take there was, okay, that means that we need a approval flow to approve buying that can be explained by the inventory parameters. And where, although this is usually not a very sexy action to take, right, adding another approval flow, in this case, everyone agreed that it was necessary, and that created the support to actually get it in place. And the third one was supplier over delivery. So there were a few suppliers that shipped more than was asked. And this was something that wasn't spotted at inbound, but wasn't spotted anywhere else, resulting in a lot of excessive inventory. And again, right, so Konekti surfaced the root causes, but also formulated the actions to prevent it. And what we often see, those issues, once you know where to look, they are obvious, but they are often lost in the many different signals that come in. So agentic process intelligence can surface them even when there is a lot happening at the same time, and it can surface it quickly, so without needing to wait for a lot of time.
So, was it in an ERP environment happening, this case?
Yeah. This was the classic SAP. SAP purchase orders, goods movements, changes to master data, and sales orders and their changes.
So you also mentioned that you are busy with an e-commerce company. Maybe that's a different area, because you discussed a lot of business to business kind of environment. So can you tell me about what kind of environment you were also act upon to use this?
Yeah. A different use case, but within supply chain. So it's one of the biggest e-commerce retailers in the Benelux. And they are looking for ways to improve their outbound logistics process. So the key question there that they want to resolve is, what should we do today in order to ensure that as many parcels as possible are ready for shipment before the carrier cutoff? Again, I think a very powerful area for agentic process intelligence, because there are operational problems that keep coming back, right? Despite the dashboards that they have and the escalations. So recurring problems where a lot can be learned from the past, and a process that leaves a lot of traces. In this case, that's a WMS system that will link to Konekti first.
So we have a few minutes left for questions. If you have questions, feel free to ask them right now. If not, we are still happy to answer your questions right after this in the virtual lounge. But I have some questions left. So what is the homework a company should do to start before all this?
Yeah. So the key thing is to think about the operational problems that you're having in your supply chain that keep coming back, right? Despite the dashboards and the escalations. And that could be in outbound logistics. There can be high material excess inventory like ABB, or OTIF like Advantech. And then once you figure out, okay, this is one of the operational problems that keep coming back, then ask 3 questions. Like, first, is this a recurring problem? Because if it's a one-off incident, you don't need agentic process intelligence or Konekti, you need crisis management. But if it's something that's recurring, then you can learn from the past. That's also the second question, right? Can we learn from the past? And then third, does this process leave a trace somewhere in the systems? This doesn't need to be a perfect system. It can be spread across different ERP or WMS systems. And if the question is yes to all 3 questions, then reach out anytime. If that sounds like an awful lot of work to do, then still reach out and we can walk through these questions together.
And another thing, what I hear a lot, we are not ready for AI. Our master data is not good enough. Is that a solid argument not to look at it, although you have 3 times yes on the questions you previously mentioned?
Yeah, I had an awesome quote from someone last week, and I don't know who the credit is for, but I'll look it up. Someone said data quality is not data quality is now I'm wrecking the quote. It's a prioritization problem.
Mhm.
So everyone struggles with the data quality. The data quality doesn't have to be perfect. It just needs to be there. And then once you start working on it and scoping the problem, that's also where you can best see, okay, where do we have sufficient data quality to get this thing moving? And if we want even more transparency in the future, what can we do then? What can we do? And that means that instead of making data quality this big abstract problem, you get into this is what we can do with the data that we have available. And if we register this data, this specific data a bit better, that opens up the room to these specific new value drivers.
So, like I mentioned, you are the winner of the European Supply Chain Startup Contest this year, and we will continue to work together because, we promise you to help you out, to put you on the map in Europe. And I said, I think your target audience should be companies who have growth problems. A lot of companies still in this economic environment, there are companies who are growing and they have growth issues. I think that's something. So basically, that's for me, an environment where your services could help massively. So that's one thing, but we'll discuss it later. We're running out of time, so if you still want to talk to Lotte, feel free to join us in the virtual lounge right after this. So we'll be there in the next 30 minutes. So you can download the company IT portfolio to visualize your own landscape. So that's available on the left. And on the right, you see a use case by Konekti. You can download over there. So that's another thing to read further right after this. And for now, for the audience being live or in the recording, thank you for listening in. I hope you like it. I hope you have learned a lot about decision intelligence and that kind of stuff. And Lotte, thank you for joining me. It was quite interesting to talk to do all of this.
Yeah. Thanks a lot. And for everyone still listening in, I shamelessly put in a link to the website for a full demo video. If you want to know more about how Konekti works, given the 3 slides that show the tool, and a way to read on about our inventory use case. And thanks, Martijn, for the invite. I think this is a great platform. I'm very thankful to be here. And looking forward to meet more people in the lounge? Are we going to the lounge now?
Yeah, we go with the virtual lounge after this.
Okay.
But be sure, we will stay in touch, and there will be way more things to discuss and to get in contact with you. Thanks for now, and I want to say thank you and bye-bye.
All right.